Close your eyes. Breathe slowly. Imagine you are walking through a quiet path under starlight. The air is soft. A voice whispers, "You are on your way to a place where your worth is seen. You're about to be overpaid. You're about to be deeply appreciated. Each step you take feels lighter. Each breath feels richer. This journey is yours. Tonight, it begins. A wide valley opens before you, glowing with golden mist. Streams of light flow like rivers. A soft voice guides you. You have worked. You have waited. Now, life prepares to reward you. As you walk, golden leaves fall from invisible trees, each one carrying a word: respect, appreciation, reward. They land at your feet. You smile. You feel a deep calm. You are worthy. You are ready. The path leads you into a gentle forest. Birds sing softly above, a melody of gratitude. In the distance, you see people, faces that once overlooked you, now looking at you with admiration. The voice says, "Every effort you made is now being seen. Your value is now being recognized. You're about to be deeply appreciated." You keep walking, your heart becoming warm, your mind becoming still. A bridge of crystal light stretches over a quiet river. As you walk across, you hear a chorus of voices. "We see you. We appreciate you. We will reward you." Golden light rises from the water, wrapping around you like a soft blanket. Each step makes you feel richer, calmer, freer. You realize all the good you gave to the world is flowing back to you now. A grand hall appears, glowing pillars, soft velvet seats. You sit down. The air is full of calm voices repeating, "You are valued. You are rewarded. You are loved." The walls shimmer with images of your own efforts, your kindness, your hard work. The voice says, "Soon you will see how much you are overpaid. Soon you will feel how deeply you are appreciated." You rise and walk up a gentle mountain path. With every step, your confidence grows. At the top, the sky opens filled with shooting stars. Each star carries a gift: love, respect, wealth, kindness. You take a deep breath. You are ready to receive. A village appears, full of people smiling softly. They open their doors and welcome you. They hand you gifts, symbols of appreciation. Every handshake, every smile says, "You deserve this. Thank you. We value you." You walk into a tunnel made of glowing crystal. The voice echoes, "Everything you gave returns multiplied. Every kindness comes back as abundance. You are about to be overpaid. You are about to be deeply appreciated." The tunnel hums like a sacred song. Your mind empties. Your heart fills. The tunnel opens onto a valley of soft gold mist. The ground glows beneath your feet. Rivers of light flow past, carrying words of gratitude. You sit near the river. The water whispers, "Rest, receive. You are worthy." In the distance, a palace glows not of stone, but of light. You walk toward it slowly. Inside, you see every good deed you've ever done turned into flowers, turned into gifts, turned into love. You lie down in a soft bed of light. The voice says, "You have arrived. You are overpaid. You are deeply appreciated. Sleep now. Receive it fully." You close your eyes. The palace fades. Only warmth remains. Only sleep remains. I hope you liked this short story. Let's listen to another story. The story we will listen to now is called Arif. Arif was an ordinary man. Not poor, not rich, just somewhere in the middle of everything. He lived in a small town near the river, where mornings smelled like wet soil and evenings faded into the hum of crickets. He worked as an accountant at a small construction company. For 10 years, he handled numbers, receipts, and the endless demands of bosses who never once said thank you. His desk was near the window, not because it was special, but because no one else wanted to sit there. It leaked sunlight in summer and cold wind in winter. Every morning, Arif arrived before anyone else. He made tea, checked emails, balanced the accounts, and reminded the workers of their payments. He was the kind of man who did everything right, yet never got noticed for doing so. The manager would praise the loud ones, the showy ones, those who made promises and half kept them. Arif, who quietly kept the company running, was invisible. One afternoon, during a team meeting, the manager announced promotions. The same 3 names echoed in the room, none of them his. Arif smiled politely, clapped softly, and lowered his eyes to hide the flicker of disappointment. He told himself, maybe next time. He had said that every year for 7 years. When the meeting ended, he walked back home under the same grey sky, his shoes collecting dust on the quiet road. Inside his little apartment, everything was neat. 1 chair, 1 table, 1 shelf filled with old notebooks and bills. He sat on the edge of his bed, looked at his reflection in the cracked mirror, and whispered, "You're doing your best. That has to count for something." But deep down, he wasn't sure anymore. Every day felt like a repetition. Wake up, work, come home, sleep. There were no surprises, no praise, no sign that life noticed his effort. The world, it seemed, was busy rewarding noise, not honesty. Still, Arif didn't quit. Something inside him, small but stubborn, told him to keep going. Maybe faith, maybe habit, maybe just the quiet belief that life couldn't ignore him forever. At night, when the lights went out, he often lay awake, staring at the ceiling. His mind wandered through unfinished dreams, the kind of dreams that get smaller with every unpaid overtime hour. He dreamed of one thing, not wealth or luxury, but recognition. He wanted someone, anyone, to say, "We see you. We appreciate what you do." But that moment never came. One evening, while leaving work, he found a small old man sitting near the gate selling tea. The man smiled and said, "Late day again, sir." Arif nodded, took a cup, and sat beside him. The tea seller looked up at the sky and said, "You know, I've been here 20 years. I used to work in a big shop once. They fired me without a word. But now I sell tea here, and every cup feels like a thank you." Arif frowned. "A thank you?" The man smiled. "Yes. Every time someone drinks my tea, they smile. That smile is worth more than the money. When you stop chasing appreciation, it comes quietly, in ways you don't expect." Arif said nothing, but his heart felt something stir, a thought he hadn't considered. Maybe being unseen didn't mean being unvalued. Maybe his time was still preparing to come. That night, he walked home slower than usual, the old man's words floating in his mind like a soft echo. When you stop chasing appreciation, it finds you. The next morning, he woke up before dawn. For the first time in years, he didn't feel tired. He stood by the window, watching the first light fall over the town. Something about the silence felt different, peaceful, almost promising. He didn't know why, but he whispered to himself, "Maybe something good is on the way." He didn't know it yet, but that quiet morning was the beginning of everything. He was about to learn that the world doesn't forget effort. It only waits for the right time to pay you back. And when it does, you are not just paid, you are overpaid and deeply appreciated. Days turned into weeks. Weeks slipped into months, and months quietly became years, without much changing in Arif's life. The same desk, the same routine, the same polite smile masking the same silent exhaustion. He didn't hate his job. He just hated what it was doing to him, turning his life into a long pause. Every morning, he crossed the same small bridge over the river to get to work. Sometimes he stopped for a moment, resting his elbows on the railing, watching the water flow past. The river kept moving endlessly, without ever asking why. He envied it for that. Inside the office, Arif had become the reliable one. Everyone trusted him with responsibilities, but never with recognition. He was the man who fixed other people's mistakes, who stayed late, who didn't complain. To his boss, that made him useful. To himself, it made him invisible. Still, Arif endured. He kept telling himself, maybe good things take longer to find people like me. But deep down, he could feel the weight of waiting pressing heavier with every passing day. It was the kind of waiting that didn't just take time. It took pieces of your heart with it. One afternoon, rain started to pour. The kind of heavy rain that silences a whole city. Arif stayed inside the office, watching drops slide down the window pane. He had finished all his work hours ago, but he didn't feel like going home. There was nothing waiting there, only silence. He opened his old notebook, the one he kept hidden in his drawer. Inside were scribbled dreams, old, forgotten ones. Start my own accounting firm, travel to the hills one winter, buy mother's house back someday. He stared at the words as if they belonged to someone else. The rain outside kept falling, each drop like a reminder of everything he had put on hold. He whispered, "How long do I have to wait for life to notice me?" The clock ticked softly. It didn't answer. That night, Arif walked home without an umbrella. The streets were half flooded, the streetlights flickering through the mist. He stopped by the old tea stall again, but the old man wasn't there. Instead, a younger boy stood behind the counter. Arif asked, "Where's the old man?" The boy replied, "He passed away last week. Heart trouble," they said. Arif froze. He didn't even know the man's name. Yet somehow it felt like losing a friend. He stood there in the drizzle, quietly, cup of tea warming his hand, his heart heavy. He remembered the old man's words. When you stop chasing appreciation, it finds you. He wondered if the old man had ever found his. Back home, Arif sat near the window again, staring into the rain. He realized something that night. Waiting isn't just about time. It's about hope. And hope, if left too long, can start to rot. He whispered softly, "Maybe it's time to stop waiting." But he didn't know what to do instead. The next morning, he went to work as usual. But something inside him had shifted. He started noticing the people around him differently. The janitor who smiled every morning. The intern who looked nervous all the time. The delivery guy who whistled while working. They all had their own waiting. For money, for love, for luck, for recognition. Everyone was carrying something invisible. And somehow, that thought made him feel less alone. A week later, the company announced layoffs. The economy was slowing down, they said. Arif's department was safe, but barely. Fear ran through the office like cold air. People whispered in corners, updated their resumes, made secret calls. Arif didn't panic. He just kept working, doing what he always did, quietly, perfectly. But this time, he noticed the tremor in his own hands as he typed. He realized he wasn't afraid of losing his job. He was afraid of losing the only place that still needed him. One evening, after everyone had left, Arif stayed back again. The office lights were off, except for the small lamp on his desk. Stacks of paper surrounded him, soft hum of the fan filling the room. He leaned back and closed his eyes. He thought about his father, a tailor who never made much money, but always said, "Son, Do your work so well that even silence will speak for you. Maybe that's what Arif had been doing all along, waiting for silence to finally speak his name out loud. Just then, the security guard came in. "Sir, you're still here." Arif smiled faintly. "Just finishing up." The guard chuckled. "You're the only one who never leaves early. One day, the world will reward that." Arif looked up. The man was half joking, but the words hit deep. "One day, the world will reward that." He smiled back. "Maybe," he said quietly. As he packed up his things, he looked once more at his desk, the papers, the empty chair beside him. For the first time, he felt something stir. Not hope exactly, but readiness. Maybe the waiting wasn't punishment. Maybe it was preparation. He didn't know it yet, but he was right. Life was building something for him, slow, invisible, and unstoppable. And when it arrived, it would come all at once. For now, he just had to hold on, to keep walking, to keep believing that effort never disappears. It only waits for the right moment to return. He locked the office door behind him and stepped into the quiet night. The moon hung low, silver and calm, over the empty streets. He whispered, "All right, life. I've waited this long. I can wait a little longer." And somewhere, unseen, unheard, life whispered back, "Good, because your time is coming soon." The following weeks felt heavier than usual. The office had become quieter. The laughter, the gossip, even the little chaos that used to fill the halls had faded. Many of Arif's colleagues had left after the layoffs. Empty desks stood like ghosts of conversations that would never happen again. Arif now sat alone most days, doing the same tasks he'd done for years. But something in him was shifting, slowly, quietly, like a seed beginning to move beneath the soil. One afternoon, the manager called him in, not for a promotion, not for praise, but for extra work. "Arif, we're short-staffed," the manager said. "You'll need to handle the new client accounts too." Temporarily, Arif nodded. "Of course, sir." He didn't argue, he didn't complain. He simply added another weight to his already full plate. When the manager left, he leaned back in his chair, sighed softly, and whispered to himself, "Temporarily. That's what they always say." Still, he kept working, late into the night, long after everyone else had gone home. At home, Arif's evenings were quiet. He had no wife, no children, only his thoughts for company. He cooked simple meals, listened to the distant sound of rain, and sometimes just sat near the window staring at the city lights. The city looked alive, full of movement, ambition, and dreams. He wondered if anyone else felt the same invisible weight he carried. The weight of being too patient, too reliable, too quiet. He thought of quitting many times. He could have walked away, found a smaller job, started something on his own. But every time he imagined it, he hesitated, not out of fear, but out of faith. Faith that the story wasn't done yet. Faith that maybe, just maybe, all of this waiting meant something. One weekend, he decided to visit his mother's old village, a place he hadn't seen in over a decade. The train ride was long, passing through green fields, small rivers, and endless rows of trees. For the first time in months, he felt peaceful. When he arrived, the air smelled of soil and mango leaves. The small house where he grew up still stood, though time had carved wrinkles into its walls. An old neighbor recognized him. "Arif, you've grown quieter," the man said, laughing. Arif smiled. "I guess the city teaches you silence." They talked about old days, his father's little tailoring shop, his mother's garden, the festivals, the laughter that once filled the yard. He realized how much of that life he had left behind, chasing a future that never looked back at him. That night, under the open sky, he sat alone by the pond, watching fireflies dance above the still water. He whispered, "Maybe life isn't about waiting for something to happen. Maybe it's about being someone worth waiting for." It was a small thought, but it changed something in him. When Arif returned to the city, he made a decision. He wouldn't wait for appreciation anymore. He would become appreciation. He would do his work not to be seen, but because he saw himself. The next morning, he arrived early as usual, but his energy was different. He greeted people warmly, helped a junior colleague understand a spreadsheet, and even fixed the broken printer himself. He wasn't doing it for attention. He was doing it because it felt right. Days passed, and something strange began to happen. People started noticing him, not for his silence, but for his steadiness. The new intern said, "Sir, you make everything look easy." The cleaner smiled and said, "You're the only one who says thank you." Even the manager, usually cold and rushed, stopped one day and said, "Arif, I don't say it enough, but you're the backbone of this place." It wasn't a promotion, it wasn't money, but for Arif, it was the first genuine recognition he'd heard in years, and it felt good. One evening, as he was leaving, he saw a small boy sitting near the gate, about 10 years old, barefoot, selling flowers. The boy smiled shyly and said, "Uncle, will you buy one?" "Just one rose." Arif smiled back and handed him a small note. More than the price of a rose. The boy's eyes widened. "Uncle, this is too much." Arif shook his head gently. "No, it's not enough. You're doing something honest. That's worth more." As he walked away, the boy's small voice followed him. "Thank you, Uncle. May you get more than you give." Arif stopped for a moment. Those words echoed in his mind like a blessing. Greater than you give. He smiled softly. He didn't know it yet, but those words were about to come true. In the following months, Arif began to change, not outwardly, but inwardly. He stopped measuring his life by salary, by promotions, by applause. Instead, he began measuring it by peace, by how calm he felt when he woke up, by how kind he was when no one was watching, by how honest he remained when no one cared. He didn't realize that the universe had started taking notice. The unseen wheels of fate were already turning, aligning opportunities, people, and timing in his favor. Because sometimes life doesn't reward you when you ask. It rewards you when you've become ready to receive. One night, as he sat by his window again, Arif whispered, "I'm not waiting anymore. I'm walking." The stars outside shimmered faintly, as if nodding in agreement. For the first time, he felt free. Not because his life had changed, but because he had. The choice to keep going had given him power. And that power was quietly pulling everything he'd ever wanted toward him. He didn't know when or how, but he finally believed that it would come. And when it did, it would come all at once. Overflowing, unstoppable, overpaid, and deeply appreciated. It was an ordinary Tuesday morning. Arif was on his way to work, walking through the narrow streets still waking from sleep. Vendors were setting up stalls, rickshaw bells rang softly, and the smell of paratha and tea floated in the air. Life felt normal, but Arif had stopped expecting surprises. He had grown peaceful in his routine. He didn't crave recognition anymore. He simply wanted to live each day with quiet dignity. Still, there was a whisper in his heart, a question he couldn't quite silence. Is this all there is for me? He tried not to think about it, but that morning, life had other plans. As he crossed the small bridge over the river, the same one he walked every day. He noticed an old man sitting near the railing. He looked like a traveler. Grey beard, weathered face, simple clothes, a small bag by his feet. But what caught Arif's attention were his eyes, sharp, calm, and strangely knowing. The man smiled when Arif passed. "Busy morning, young man?" Arif nodded politely. "Yes, work never ends." The old man chuckled softly. "Work never ends, but neither does life, unless you stop noticing it." Arif paused. There was something unusual about his voice, gentle, yet full of quiet authority. He asked, "Do you live around here?" The man shook his head. "I go where I'm needed." "Sit for a moment. You look like someone who carries more than just a bag." Arif hesitated, then sat beside him on the stone ledge. The river below glistened in the morning light. The old man looked at him carefully. "You've been waiting a long time, haven't you?" Arif frowned. "How do you know that?" The man smiled faintly. "Because I can see it. It's in your shoulders, your eyes. You carry your patience like a stone, heavy, solid, quiet." Arif sighed. "I've worked hard all my life, done everything right, but nothing changes. I'm still just here." The man nodded slowly. "Do you know why?" Arif looked confused. "Bad luck, maybe." The stranger chuckled softly. "No, because you've been waiting for life to pay you back in the same currency you gave it. You gave effort, and you expected reward. But life doesn't work like that. It doesn't pay with money or titles. It pays with growth, strength, and timing." Arif stayed silent. The words sank deep, like stones falling into still water. The man continued. "When a seed is planted, it disappears underground. It looks dead, but it's not. It's becoming something. You, my friend, are not stuck. You're becoming." Arif looked at him, eyes heavy with emotion. "But how long does becoming take?" The old man smiled. "As long as it must. The longer it takes, the deeper the roots. And when the roots are deep, the tree doesn't fall in storms." The river breeze blew gently through their silence. For the first time, Arif didn't feel restless. He felt seen. The old man looked out at the water. "Do you know why you haven't been appreciated yet?" Arif shook his head. The man said quietly, "Because appreciation is a mirror. It only reflects when you stop looking for it. When you begin to see yourself clearly, the world starts to see you too." Something inside Arif shifted, a small, invisible click. It wasn't inspiration, it was understanding. He whispered, "So I've been looking in the wrong direction all along." The man smiled gently. "Not wrong, just incomplete. You've been trying to prove your worth to others. Now it's time to prove it to yourself." They sat in silence again for a few minutes. Then the man stood up slowly and said, "I should go. Others are waiting." Arif asked, "Will I see you again?" The man chuckled, "Perhaps. But whether you do or not, remember my words. When you stop working for recognition and start working from recognition, the world overpays you." Arif stood there, speechless. By the time he found the courage to thank him, the man had already disappeared into the crowd. That day at work, everything felt different. The same walls, the same desk, the same tasks. Yet nothing felt ordinary anymore. He smiled more. He moved slower, more intentionally. He even helped fix a colleague's mistake without frustration. When someone asked why he was so calm, he simply said, "I finally understood something important. Waiting doesn't mean nothing's happening." Weeks passed. Small things began to shift in his life. People started trusting him with bigger decisions. The manager sought his advice. Clients praised his patience. It wasn't dramatic, no sudden success, no lottery, no miracle. It was quiet, steady, natural, like a tide slowly rising until you realize the shore has changed. One evening, while locking the office, Arif looked at his reflection in the glass door. The man staring back didn't look tired anymore. He looked grounded. He smiled softly and whispered, "You're right, old man. I'm becoming." That night, as he walked home, he saw the moon hanging over the city, soft, full, golden. For the first time in years, he didn't feel small beneath it. He felt aligned. He knew that something greater was unfolding, something that had been waiting for him to be ready, not desperate, not broken, but whole. And deep in his heart, he felt a calm whisper, not from the stranger this time, but from within. "You're about to be overpaid and deeply appreciated." He smiled to himself. No doubt, no fear, just faith. And the river, flowing quietly beside the bridge, seemed to whisper the same words back to him in its silver ripples. The world didn't change overnight. The sky looked the same, the office still buzzed, and life went on as usual. But inside Arif, something subtle had shifted. He no longer rushed through mornings. He no longer sighed when the bus was late. He walked slower now, noticing the smell of tea from roadside stalls, the sound of children running to school, the warmth of sunlight on old walls. For the first time in years, he felt alive inside ordinary moments. A few weeks later, on a soft Friday morning, the manager called him into the conference room. The tone was serious, but calm. "Arif," the manager said, looking over some papers, "we've reviewed the department's performance this quarter. The new project, accounting, was clean, consistent, and far better than expected. Whose idea was it to reorganize the reports?" Arif hesitated. "It just made sense to simplify them, sir. I didn't want the juniors to get confused." The manager smiled faintly. "Well, it worked," the clients noticed, "and we've decided that from next month, you'll be leading that section officially." Arif blinked. He wasn't sure he heard correctly. He hadn't asked for this, hadn't even thought of it. But here it was, quietly arriving, like rain after a long drought. He simply said, "Thank you, sir." And in that moment, he remembered the old man's words. When you stop working for recognition and start working from recognition, the world overpays you. That weekend, Arif took the train back to his village. He hadn't been home for months. The fields looked greener than he remembered. The wind was softer. The village pond shimmered with reflections of the evening sun. He walked the familiar path toward the small mud house where his mother lived. When she saw him at the gate, she gasped in joy. "Arif! My boy, you didn't even call." He laughed and hugged her tightly. "I wanted to surprise you, Ma." Inside the house, everything smelled of lentil soup and warmth. His mother served him with her trembling hands, smiling through her wrinkles. "You look different," she said quietly. "There's peace in your face. Did you finally rest?" Arif smiled. "I think I finally learned how." That night, as crickets sang outside, Arif sat by the window looking at the moon. He remembered the bridge, the river, the old man. He wondered if that stranger had ever existed at all, or if life itself had worn his face for a moment to speak to him. Either way, the message had worked. A month later, Arif received an email from the head office. It said, "Dear Mr. Rahman, your consistent performance and dedication have been recognized by the review board. We're pleased to inform you of a salary adjustment and a leadership bonus for the next quarter." He read it twice, then once more, just to be sure. It wasn't a small raise. It was significant. Arif put his hand on his chest and smiled. He whispered softly, "You were right, old man. The world overpays in silence." He didn't celebrate loudly. He didn't buy anything new. He simply walked home that evening, bought 2 roses from the same barefoot boy near the gate, one for his mother and one for the photo of his late father that hung on the wall. He placed the flower gently beside the frame and said, "I finally made it, Baba. But not because I fought, because I learned to trust." Over the following months, people around Arif started noticing changes they couldn't explain. He spoke softer. He listened more. He stopped complaining. He smiled even when things went wrong. A younger colleague once asked, "Sir, how do you stay so calm all the time?" Arif chuckled. "I stopped chasing things that were already walking toward me." That line spread quietly through the office. People began repeating it like a little quote. Soon, his department became the calmest, most efficient unit in the company. No one rushed, no one shouted. They worked, they laughed, they shared food, and they finished early. When a new intern joined, Arif offered to mentor him personally. He remembered how lost he once felt, and how one stranger's kindness had changed him forever. He often told the young ones, "Success isn't about being first. It's about becoming ready when your turn comes." One rainy evening, Arif took a long walk by the river, the same place he had met the old man. The bridge was empty again, washed in golden reflections of city lights. He leaned on the railing and watched the ripples dance. Suddenly, he heard footsteps. He turned, but it wasn't the same man. It was a small child selling roasted peanuts under a plastic umbrella. "Uncle, want some?" the boy asked. Arif smiled and bought a handful. He offered double payment, but the boy shook his head. "No, sir, it's okay. You're already giving me too much." Arif laughed softly. "No, little one. The world is giving me too much. I'm just passing it on." As the boy ran off through the rain, Arif looked up at the sky. Thunder rumbled far away. And in that moment, he realized something profound. Life doesn't reward you when you want it. It rewards you when you're ready to hold it without losing yourself. The rain fell harder. He closed his eyes and let it wash over his face. No umbrella, no rush, just peace. He whispered again, "Greater than you're about to be overpaid and deeply appreciated." But this time, he wasn't hoping. He was acknowledging, because he already was. Years later, Arif would retire with quiet pride. He would never tell the full story to anyone, not about the bridge or the stranger or the words that changed everything. But sometimes, on quiet evenings, he would walk by the river again, watching the sunset. And if anyone sat beside him, tired, worried, lost, he would smile gently and say, "Sit for a while, my friend. You look like someone who carries more than just a bag." And in that moment, the circle would begin again. One soul passing light to another, quietly, gently, endlessly. Time has a gentle way of moving. It doesn't ask for permission. It doesn't rush. It simply carries you through days, through years, through seasons, until one morning, you wake up and realize how far you've come. For Arif, that morning came quietly. He was now in his late 60s. His hair had turned silver. His hands carried the soft tremor of age. But his eyes, they still held the same steady calm, the same quiet knowing that had once been gifted to him on a misty bridge many years ago. The city had changed, but the river hadn't. It still flowed beneath the same old bridge, carrying secrets, stories, and reflections of countless lives. Sometimes Arif would walk there after his evening prayers, leaning on his walking stick, breathing in the familiar scent of the water. The air was cooler now. Birds skimmed across the surface as the sun melted into gold and pink. He'd sit on the same stone ledge, the one where he once met the stranger, and simply watch the world go by. And often, someone would come sit beside him, a tired student, a stressed office worker, a heartbroken traveler. They never planned it. Life simply brought them there, the same way it once brought him. Arif had stopped believing in coincidences long ago. He knew better now. One evening, as the call to prayer echoed faintly in the distance, a young man came rushing across the bridge. His shirt was wrinkled, his eyes full of frustration, his pace restless. He stopped near Arif, sighing heavily, muttering something under his breath. Arif smiled softly and asked, "Long day, son?" The boy nodded, rubbing his forehead. "I don't know why I even try. I work so hard, but nobody notices. It's like I'm invisible." Arif's heart stirred gently. He saw himself, decades younger, sitting on this same spot, saying almost those exact same words. He chuckled quietly. "You remind me of someone I used to know." The boy frowned. "Really? Who?" Arif smiled and looked out at the water. A man who thought life had forgotten him, but life was just preparing him. The boy stayed silent, curiosity softening his frustration. "What do you mean?" Arif turned slightly, his eyes glimmering in the golden light. "When you work with your heart, the world is taking notes, quietly. But it can only reward you when you're ready to hold the reward without losing your peace. Until then, the waiting is not punishment, it's preparation." The boy looked down, thinking. Arif continued, "You're not being ignored. You're being built," the young man asked. "But how long do I have to wait? I'm tired of trying." Arif smiled gently, the same smile that once changed his own life. "As long as it takes to become the person who can handle what you're asking for." He looked at the river again and said softly, "When you stop working for recognition and start working from recognition, the world overpays you." The boy froze. Something about that sentence hit deep, like a forgotten truth suddenly remembered. He looked at Arif, eyes wide. "That's beautiful. Did you make that up?" Arif laughed quietly, shaking his head. "No, son. I once heard it from someone else, a long time ago, right here." The boy didn't know what to say. He just nodded slowly, eyes softening, his shoulders relaxing. After a few moments, Arif added, "Now go home. Eat. Rest. Tomorrow, work again. But this time, not to prove anything. Work because you already are something." The boy smiled faintly. "Thank you, Uncle." "Really?" He walked away, his steps lighter than before. When he disappeared into the crowd, Arif stayed seated, watching the reflection of the city lights on the river. A cool breeze passed over the bridge, lifting his hair slightly. He closed his eyes, letting the sound of water fill the silence. And then he heard it, not through his ears, but through memory. That same calm, knowing voice that once spoke to him decades ago. "You've done well, my friend. The circle is complete." He smiled softly, whispering, "I only passed it on." A single tear rolled down his cheek, not of sadness, but of gratitude. He looked up at the sky, whispering quietly, greater than, "Thank you for sending him that day. I hope I became what you saw in me." The clouds parted slightly, revealing a full moon glowing over the water, golden, peaceful, eternal. Years later, long after Arif's passing, people in the neighborhood would still talk about the kind old man on the bridge, the one who always listened, who always smiled, who spoke in words that somehow healed. No one knew where he learned such wisdom. No one knew his story. But everyone agreed on one thing. He made people believe again, in patience, in kindness, in timing, in life. And sometimes, on certain misty mornings, locals swore they'd seen another old man sitting there, grey-bearded, calm, carrying a small bag beside him, smiling quietly at the sunrise. Perhaps the river remembers. Perhaps the circle never ends. The story doesn't really end. It just changes hands from one listener to another. And maybe, right now, somewhere in the world, someone tired, someone waiting, someone quietly holding on, needs to hear what Arif once heard. You're not forgotten. You're becoming. You're about to be overpaid and deeply appreciated. The rain had just stopped. The city of Seattle was wrapped in a heavy, glimmering silence. That strange calm that follows a storm, when every sound feels sharper and the air smells like renewal. Streetlights flickered through the mist, casting golden halos on the wet pavement. In the distance, the low hum of a passing ferry echoed faintly across the bay. Ethan Walker walked alone through the drizzle, his shoes soaked, his coat clinging to his shoulders. He was 32, single, exhausted, a man who had done everything right and still felt wrong inside. He worked in a big technology firm downtown, endless spreadsheets, meaningless meetings, and a smiling manager who used words like team synergy and growth potential while quietly draining the life out of everyone. For years, Ethan had been waiting for his promotion. It was always next quarter, next cycle, next opportunity, but it never came. That night, after another late shift and a forgotten dinner, he couldn't make himself drive home. Instead, he just walked, past the empty parking lots, past the buzzing traffic lights, past the tired glow of coffee shops closing for the night. The city was sleeping. Only the sound of dripping rain and distant car tires broke the silence. He crossed a quiet park and found himself standing before the Fremont Bridge, a small, old bridge arched over the dark water of the canal. He leaned on the cold railing and looked down. The water was calm, black as ink, rippling softly beneath the faint orange glow of the street lamps. It looked endless. Ethan sighed. He felt like that river, moving constantly, going nowhere. He whispered to himself, "Greater than I work hard. I'm loyal. I do everything right. But it's like I don't exist." The wind answered only with a soft, indifferent breeze. A stray leaf skidded across the bridge and fell into the water. The ripples swallowed it without a trace. For a while, he just stood there, not crying, not angry, just tired. Utterly, silently tired. Then he heard footsteps, soft, slow, the kind of footsteps that feel out of place in a world that's supposed to be asleep. Ethan turned. An old man was approaching, wearing a long grey coat and a dark wool hat pulled low. He walked with a cane, his steps steady and deliberate. When he reached Ethan, he stopped beside him and looked out over the water. The man's voice was calm, gentle, but had a strange authority in it. "Long night?" he asked. Ethan nodded slowly. "You could say that." The old man smiled faintly. "You look like someone carrying a burden you can't name." Ethan gave a short, tired laugh. "Maybe. Or maybe I'm just losing my patience with life. Life." The man's smile grew a little. "Life isn't unfair, son. It's just slow to pay its debts." Ethan frowned, glancing at him. "What do you mean?" The man tapped his cane lightly on the bridge floor. "The world doesn't ignore effort. It only delays reward, to see if you'll keep going when nobody's watching." Ethan looked back at the river. "That's poetic." But it doesn't help much when rent's due and your boss thinks your name's Evan, not Ethan. The man chuckled softly. You sound like me, 30 years ago. Ethan studied him. So, what changed for you? The old man looked up at the cloudy sky. The same thing that's about to change for you. Ethan raised an eyebrow. And what's that? The man turned to him with eyes that suddenly seemed too bright for the dim night. Greater than you're about to be overpaid and deeply appreciated. Ethan blinked, caught off guard. What did you just say? The man smiled knowingly. Greater than you heard me. You've been giving too much for too long, and life keeps its receipts. One day soon, it's going to repay you, with interest. Ethan laughed weakly, shaking his head. That's nice to hear, I guess. But it sounds like something you'd read on a coffee mug. The old man grinned. Maybe, but not everything true needs to sound complicated. He leaned closer and said quietly, just promise me one thing. Don't give up right before the tide turns. The test always comes before the recognition. Ethan wanted to ask his name, but before he could, a strong gust of wind blew across the bridge, sending a shiver through him. When he turned back, the old man was gone, completely gone. Only the sound of the water remained, rippling softly beneath the bridge. Ethan spun around, scanning the length of the walkway. Nothing. No footsteps. No figure. Just fog. His heart thudded in his chest. Had the man even been real? He stared down at the water, trying to process what had happened. Those words echoed in his mind like a mantra. You're about to be overpaid and deeply appreciated. It sounded ridiculous, and yet it didn't. Something about that sentence lodged itself deep inside him, somewhere between hope and disbelief. He took one last look at the silent water, then turned and began walking back through the mist toward the sleeping city. The night air felt lighter now. The streets seemed softer, almost forgiving. For the first time in months, Ethan didn't feel like a ghost in his own life. He didn't know if tomorrow would be better. But as he walked, he whispered to himself, more a prayer than a promise. Maybe I just need to keep going. Far above him, the clouds began to thin, and a sliver of silver moonlight slipped through, touching the bridge, the water, and the lonely man walking toward a future that, for the first time, didn't feel entirely hopeless. The next morning, Ethan Walker woke with the sound of rain tapping on his apartment window. Seattle was grey again, as if the sky itself refused to rest. He sat at the edge of his bed, running a hand through his hair, still thinking about the old man on the bridge. Had it been real? The man's words echoed in his mind, like an aftertaste of truth he couldn't shake off. Greater than, when you don't give up, the world overpays. He smiled faintly. Yeah, right, he muttered to himself, pulling on his coat. But as the day went on, strange things began to happen. Not miracles, not coincidences, just small moments that made him pause. At the cafe near his office, the barista who never remembered his name said, "Morning, Ethan." The usual. He froze, smiled. Yeah, thanks. Later that day, a client he'd worked for months without recognition sent an email. Greater than, we're grateful for your effort, Ethan. You saved us. He couldn't help it, he whispered. Greater than you're about to be overpaid and deeply appreciated, and laughed to himself. At night, he returned to the same bridge. The mist was lighter this time, the air warmer. He waited. No old man appeared, just the sound of the river flowing like a low hum of patience. He stood there a long time, feeling the strange peace of being unseen but not forgotten. For the first time in years, Ethan wasn't desperate to be recognized. He was becoming something else, quiet, focused, free. A few months passed. Ethan had changed, not outwardly, but inside. He no longer competed to be noticed. He listened more, helped others quietly, and somehow, without trying, his work started shining brighter. Then came the storm. One morning, his boss called him into a meeting. "Ethan, the company's cutting costs. I'm afraid your position might be affected." The words hit like cold water. After everything, the long hours, the effort, the sacrifices, was this how it would end? He walked out of the building into the pouring rain. Seattle's skyline blurred behind the curtain of water. For a moment, all his peace cracked open. "So, this is it," he whispered to the sky. "This is how you repay me." But deep inside, beneath the panic, something, a memory, a voice, rose quietly. "The world delays your reward to see if you'll give up first." He stopped walking, closed his eyes, and smiled through the rain. "Not this time," he said softly. "Not this time." That night, he updated his resume, but instead of searching desperately, he started something small. A freelance consulting firm, just himself and his laptop. He called it Silver Bridge Solutions, named after the bridge where he'd met the stranger. At first, it was slow. Days passed with no clients, no calls. But Ethan stayed patient. He remembered the old man's words like a compass. When you don't give up, the world overpays. And then, it happened. A client he'd helped years ago found him online. "We need someone trustworthy. Your name came to mind immediately," they said. That deal opened another, and another. Within 6 months, Ethan's small firm exploded with projects, connections, and unexpected income. The man who once felt invisible had become the most sought-after name in his industry. And one quiet morning, sitting in his sunlit new office overlooking the Seattle skyline, Ethan realized, greater than I didn't lose my job. I was being redirected years past. Ethan's business grew beyond what he'd ever imagined. He was respected, admired. But more than that, he was peaceful. He didn't chase success anymore. He used it. He started a foundation that helped people who had lost their jobs, men and women standing on the edge of their own bridges, just like he once had. He called it the Deeply Appreciated Foundation. Every month, he visited schools and shelters, talking about perseverance and faith. But one winter night, he returned to the same bridge, the Fremont Bridge, now glowing under falling snow. He stood by the railing, watching his breath fade into the cold air. The water below was still, half frozen, like a mirror of everything he had become. Then he saw him. Across the bridge, the old man in the grey coat, walking slowly toward him through the snow. Ethan's heart skipped. He stepped forward. "It's you." The man smiled, eyes as calm and knowing as before. "I told you, didn't I?" he said softly. "You're about to be overpaid and deeply appreciated." Ethan laughed, the kind of laugh that holds both tears and gratitude. "You were right." Every word, the man looked out over the water. "It's never about the money, son. The overpayment is peace. The appreciation is purpose." Ethan nodded slowly. "So what now?" The man smiled faintly. "Now, you pass it on." He turned, his figure fading slowly into the white fog. Ethan stood there long after he was gone, watching the snow fall into the dark river, each flake glowing for a moment before vanishing. And then, softly, he whispered, "You're about to be overpaid and deeply appreciated." But this time, it wasn't a prayer. It was a promise, for everyone still waiting on their own bridge, under their own grey sky. A story about faith, patience, and the quiet certainty that life keeps its promises. And now, dear listener, as you sit there, or perhaps lie there, letting the calm of the night wrap around you, I want you to take a deep breath. Maybe your eyes are heavy, drifting towards sleep. Maybe your mind is still awake, replaying the day, full of tasks and worries. Wherever you are right now, know this. This story wasn't just about Ethan. It was about you, too. Yes, you. All those moments when you felt invisible, when your work went unnoticed, when you gave and felt like no one appreciated you. Those were your bridges, your late nights, your silent struggles, your quiet patience. They all matter. The truth is simple, yet powerful. Life notices. Life keeps receipts. And life rewards those who don't give up. Ethan's journey began with exhaustion and uncertainty. He walked alone through a rainy city, unsure if the universe even cared. But he kept walking. He leaned on the railing of that bridge. He let his heart whisper its fears, and he listened, even when no one else seemed to. And that's where the magic happens. Because when you keep showing up, when you keep doing the right thing quietly, faithfully, the universe begins to move behind the scenes. Opportunities appear in ways you didn't anticipate. People notice what you don't think matters. Doors open, sometimes slowly, sometimes suddenly, but always at the right moment. You may not feel appreciated today. You may feel overlooked or exhausted, but the world has a way of overpaying when the timing is right. And the most beautiful part, that overpayment isn't always money. Sometimes it's recognition, sometimes it's respect, sometimes it's a quiet peace inside that no one can take away. So, I want you to remember these things tonight. 1. Your effort is not wasted. Every small act of patience, every kind word, every hour you've worked in silence, it's all part of the journey. 2. Trust the process. Just like Ethan watched the river flow, trust that life is moving even when it seems still. 3. You are more capable than you realize. You don't need validation to know your worth. It's already within you. 4. Keep going. Even when the path feels empty, even when it seems unfair, your persistence will turn into a bridge for the next part of your life. And now, a small question for you. Are your eyes closing as you listen? Or are you wide awake, leaning forward, hanging on every word? It doesn't matter which it is, because whether you're falling asleep or fully alert, the story has already whispered its secret. You are about to be overpaid and deeply appreciated. I want you to think of a bridge in your own life, a bridge you're standing on tonight. It could be a challenge at work, a difficult relationship, a personal dream that seems too far away. Imagine yourself standing there, the rain falling gently around you, the lights reflecting in the water below. And now imagine this. Somewhere ahead, the sun is about to rise. The mist will clear. And what you've been waiting for, recognition, reward, peace, or a breakthrough, is already on its way to you. Even Ethan didn't know how it would arrive. Sometimes it came as a job, sometimes as respect, sometimes as the quiet joy of knowing he was making a difference. Your reward may not look exactly how you expect, but it is coming. So tonight, as you let this story settle into your mind, take a moment to acknowledge your own patience and effort. Give yourself credit for all the invisible work, all the late nights, all the times you kept going when it would have been easier to stop. And when you wake tomorrow, or even if you don't wake yet, carry this truth with you. You are enough. Your effort is seen. Your journey matters. You are about to be overpaid and deeply appreciated. Now, before we end, I have a small request. If you've been listening to this story tonight, whether wide awake or softly drifting towards sleep, I want you to share your thoughts. Which part of Ethan's journey spoke to you the most? Was it the night on the bridge when he first felt the weight of being unseen? Or the quiet days where small moments of recognition began to appear? Or perhaps the snowy reunion where he finally understood that patience and faith always pay off? Whatever your favorite moment was, write it down or comment below. Let the story reach other people too. Your voice could be the bridge for someone else who needs to hear this message. And remember, even in silence, even in the stillness of night, your story is being written. Every choice you make, every effort you put in, every kind word you share, it matters. And one day, the world will respond. Not all at once, not always loudly, but in a way that makes your heart swell with the kind of joy and peace you deserve. So tonight, close your eyes if you're ready. Breathe slowly. Feel the story of Ethan Walker settle in your mind. Know that your bridges are strong. Know that your patience is fertile soil. Know that you are not invisible. And when morning comes, step into your day with quiet confidence, because your reward is already on its way. Thank you for listening. Thank you for trusting this story. And thank you for being patient, brave, and persistent in your own life. May your bridges lead you to a place where you are deeply appreciated, abundantly rewarded, and fully seen. Good night, or good listening. And remember, the world notices, the river flows, and your moment is coming.